Hello there, and welcome along. The Gardener Ben here with a new revised Best for Containers and Best for Growing in Pots collection. Now, many of you will already be very familiar with my Best of for Growing in Pots and Container collection. It's been on the internet for a long time, I think filmed way back in 2022. However, I have now reviewed so many more roses, and in that process, I've encountered many more roses that really deserve to be on this list. So this is a new revised updated list for 2025 containing no fewer than 30 roses. Now, not all of them are going to be present today in the collection. I simply don't have time in the video to actually showcase all of the roses for you, because what I wanted to do before I start actually showing you the roses within this collection is actually just talk you through the basic principles of growing in a container or a pot, because many people can get a rose to survive, but what we really want to do is for roses to thrive. And in this particular video, all of the roses that are being showcased will actually thrive in pots and containers if they are in the correct size pot and they are maintained properly. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is you need to choose the right size container. Now, you can choose any container that's good for you: a recycled water tank, a recycled bin, a plastic pot, a terracotta pot, glazed stone, whatever you fancy. Anything reclaimed and galvanized is all good and fine by me, especially if you're growing, for instance, on an elevated balcony or terrace where you've got to be aware of weight. So you need to make sure that what you do put in the pot actually thrives and actually gets away quite nicely. The minimum size pot I'm going to suggest you ever use for a rose is going to be around 45 to 50 centimeters in diameter and around 55 to 60 centimeters deep. And just to put that into perspective for you, I have my tape measure here. So 45 centimeters is that across in diameter, just a little over 1.5 feet. 55 centimeters deep is around that. So it's a really quite large pot, and that's the suggestion for a rose. Most roses, small roses, are reaching around 2 to 2.5 feet tall and around 1.5 to 2 feet in diameter. I'm then going to make a suggestion that you actually add another 10 centimeters in diameter and another 10 centimeters in depth for every half a foot the rose gets. So if you have a rose that is, for instance, going to reach around 3.5 feet tall and around 3.5 feet wide, you want to be aiming for your pot to be around 60 centimeters in diameter and around 65 to 70 centimeters deep, and continue to work up there. Now, if you wanted to, you can put roses into smaller containers, but I often see on the internet people moaning that their roses are stressed, they've got black spot, they've got mold, they've got mildew, they're not producing flowers of a quality they expect them to see after seeing, for instance, a review from myself. And that's normally because the rose doesn't have access to water that it needs, and also it doesn't have enough access to the nutrients it needs. Roses are notoriously deep rooted, and when you get them bare root, the roots have often been trimmed off to balance the top and the bottom growth, but they often plunge their roots several feet down into the subsoil to access water and nutritional value from the soil. So make sure that you place your rose in a large enough container for it to actually thrive. During the winter months, pots should be lifted up off the ground and placed either onto bricks or to pot feet to make sure they don't waterlog and to make sure they're free draining and the terracotta or whatever the pot is made of doesn't split during the cold winter months. During cold winter months, if you're growing in a very cold growing zone and you're experiencing temperatures of below -10 to -15, it is often advisable that you move your roses into the lee of a building or an outbuilding with a window where you can protect them from the worst of the winter weather. If you can't do that, sometimes lagging is necessary, which is where you wrap the pot in something free breathing and breathable like a cotton sack or hessian sacking, just to keep the worst of the winter weather off. During the summer months, it is really important you get a water retaining saucer underneath the pot itself, and that just catches a little bit of extra water to make sure that your rose stays in tip-top condition during the summer months. One of the largest questions I get asked as a professional gardener, and of course as a rose expert here on the internet, is to give a formula about how often I should be watering my roses. I cannot unfortunately give you a formula for that. It's something that you need to pay attention to as a gardener and make sure that you are making good choices and watering them deeply. It is far better to water roses in their pots with lots and lots of water, fewer times, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I tend to water every other day here at North Lodge, and I'm making sure that each potted rose is receiving at least 14 to 16 litres of water at any one time. That is at least 1.5 watering cans of water. You want to be leaving a nice reservoir at the very, very top of the pot, something in the region of about 7.5 to 10 centimetres, and you want to fill that up with water so it's right up to the very top of the pot, and you want to see air bubbles coming out of the compost or soil, the growing media, so that water travels right down into the very, very depth of the pot, giving it plenty of water to access during the times when you're not watering them. Another question I get asked all the time is feeding, and when should I feed and when should I top dress? Now, I'm going to signpost some videos I've posted to my subscriber based content on YouTube, Instagram, and on TikTok. That's paid for subscriber content, where you can access the full body of media at any time that talks you through the process of not only top dressing your plants regularly, but also unpotting and completely repotting the plant. So you don't have to go through huge expensive changes of actually changing the pots. You can actually just remove them from the pot during the correct time of year, knock off all of the soil, prune them and replant them. My guides are available on YouTube, Instagram and TikTok to watch to paying membership subscribers at any time. So if you have any questions on that basis, please do make sure that you have a look at that series of videos. The other thing is also liquid feeding, and liquid feeding always takes place during the active growing periods of the year. So normally we start liquid feeding somewhere in the region of about the end of April, and we liquid feed all the way through to the end of September, sometimes into the very beginning parts of October, depending on where you're growing. But we want to make sure that the plant receives plenty of liquid feed, especially if it's grown in a container, because the compost, unfortunately, when you water heavily, the nutrients get leached through the pot. It's not as if it stays in the soil in the ground and it just has access to the whole body of soil around it. Unfortunately, trace elements, things like potassium, things like nitrogen, and other things that keep the color of the leaves, unfortunately, are leached through the soil and they're removed. So you need to make sure you offer your plants a liquid feed at least every 2 weeks. Personally, I use Envy Seafeed Extra. It's a seaweed-based feed fertilizer, which I drench onto the soil and occasionally douse over the leaves. And you can use a whole manner of other things like Uncle Tom's Tonic, or your own fertilizers you may make from other green matter, from, for instance, borage in the garden is a really good one. The other thing to bear in mind when you're choosing your containers, and especially your top dressings, is I always use horticultural grit over the very top of my pots. It's a very small, very fine grit, particle size of something in the region of 5 to 10 millimeters. It's small and it doesn't hold any heat. During modern growing, lots of people are choosing to use quite stark coloured pots, which of course is fine. But if you're choosing a dark coloured pot, for instance, a grey or a black, to fit in with a certain type of colour scheme in your garden, those items are going to get really, really very warm during the summer months. They're going to continue to hold heat even when the sun has gone down, and especially if you've top dressed the pot with a large cobble or stone, something the size of your fist. They act as hot rocks and continue to cook the root systems through into the evening. So if you do want to top dress the pot off with something decorative, please choose a small stone, something with a small particle size, ideally under around 15 millimeters in size, so something about the size of your little thumbnail, a pea gravel, something like that, and keep the color light wherever possible. So avoid black and stone, sort of plum colored slate, that kind of thing, because unfortunately it does hold the heat and it continues to cook the root ball during the evening, which can unfortunately cause stress, black spot mold and mildew. Those are my tips for best for growing in pots, and every single rose that you're just about to hear me talk about has its own individual rose review. So please, if you're watching this particular video on YouTube, do continue watching after this video has finished, and I will load all of the videos onto the back of it so you have a playlist to continue watching. So every single rose, if you have one that particularly catches your eye, will have its own individual rose review, which you can watch at any time. Some of those videos, unfortunately, are only available to paying membership subscribers only, and those that are contained in this video that you will have a problem with will be lifted and be available to the wider audience at the end of January 2026, so not long to wait for those at all. Every single rose that I've chosen in this particular video, it has its own qualities and its own attributes. They're all relatively small. Everybody's staying around 3 to 3.5 feet in size and around 3 to 3.5 feet wide, which personally I think is just about the right size for growing in a container or pot and quite handleable for most people. However, all of the roses also have wonderful characteristics. Long flowering periods, great fragrances, or just a huge amount of flowers, which meaning if you're growing in a small space, these roses are going to work really hard for you over a long period of time. For me, it's not just about how the rose being small enough to be grown in a container, as many breeders quickly sort of slap a label onto their website, this one's suitable for growing in a container because it's 2.5 feet tall. For me, it has to have more, it has to have good form, good fragrance, good disease resistance, and wherever possible, because it's in a pot, you're going to be moving around these items quite a lot when watering, deadheading, shuffling things around on your patio or terrace. These have to have low thorn counts wherever possible. So these 30 roses all have some wonderful characteristics. Right, kicking off with a few roses that we don't have for you to bring details from today. The first of which is Roald Dahl from David Austin Roses. This particular rose is unbelievably good in a pot, especially if you have a slightly shady location in the garden. Roald Dahl, just reaching around 3 to 3.5 feet tall and around the same wide, produces beautiful, rich, dark apricot flowers, which are lovely and shallowly cupped all the way through the summer months. It has a wonderful lime, fresh green foliage and produces great hips towards the back end of the season. So a good all-round plant for showcasing in the garden, especially if you're growing in a container, and especially if you're growing with a location with a slightly shady edge. Maybe you want to put it next to your front door and you have an overhanging porch, or the sun doesn't move round to the front or back of the house to a certain time of year, to a certain time of day. Roald Dahl will thrive in around 4 to 5 hours of direct sunlight per day, making it absolutely ideal for growing in a container. The next one, once again, also from David Austin Roses, is Vanessa Bell, a small and compact variety here in the UK, reaching slowly around 2.5 to 3 feet tall, and always one of the first David Austin roses in flower. Very similar to the colour of the shirt that I'm wearing today, Vanessa Bell will produce beautiful sherbet yellow, very, very soft yellow flowers right at the beginning of the season, then have another wave of flowers towards the middle of the middle of July and into August. So a really good, small and compact plant for growing in a container. The next one, I do actually have one to show you, and this one also makes its way onto my best for growing in a hanging basket collection. A very petite little rose. This one is Queen Mother, an absolutely adorable, very simple semi-double rose with beautiful, soft pink flowers, which are borne in really large sprays, each completely open, flat, very much like a dog rose. They have wonderful apricot pink buds and this lovely open form, which are perfect for pollinators, free flowering. It also has a very soft and billowy nature, so perfect for growing in an elevated container. Maybe you want to plant this one in an urn that's up on a pedestal, or place this one in a pot on a wall and just let it tumble down. But it's a really, really nice one. Very disease resistant, incredibly tough, very free flowering. So the first one I'm showcasing for you today is Queen Mother. Onto the ladder it goes, the first one down. The next one also appears on my best for growing in a hanging basket collection and is a rose of French origin. This one is Bordure Camaieu, a tri-coloured rose. Now these are a little bit blown, but you can see some of the spectrum of colour. This particular rose really very, very small and petite, only reaching around 1.5 to 2 feet tall and around 1.5 to 2 feet wide. It's very, very small indeed. But if you want a rose that's going to flower almost continuously through the whole of the summer, from June, July, August, September, October, and sometimes even into November, Bordure Camaieu is going to be a rose that you really want to look out for. Absolutely smothered in flowers for months and months and months on end. Opening pink, sherbet yellow, cream and white. It blushes and changes colour depending on the heat. This one completely blown out. You can see that lovely sherbet yellow marbling through that one there. Has been in flower for several weeks in a hanging basket and is looking really, really good. I'll deadhead it and it'll have another wave of flowers in as little as 2 weeks' time. So a very hard-working, very tough rose that can take some really cold temperatures as well. So the next one I'm showcasing for you today is Bordure Camaieu. Another rose also fully reviewed this year in 2025 that's appearing on this list is Heavenly Pink. This one is available from Peterbilt's Roses and has really captivated my attention this year. I'm very excited. I know exactly where I'm going to be planting this one moving forward in the garden, but producing huge sprays of very delicate little pink flowers all the way through the summer months on lovely arching stems. Once again, a small and compact plant with great disease resistance and great tolerance to heat, wind and rain. So great, for instance, if you're growing on an elevated balcony where you take a little bit of weather, if the weather, for instance, rolls in off the sea, this one is going to do really well. I believe bred by Lewis Lenz, who has a really good eye for these things. Heavenly Pink is a really cute and very, very sweet little rose, perfect for adding that sense of whimsy and informal edge to a container garden. I'm going to be planting mine right up to the very, very front of a path where I'm going to let it spill over the paving, and it's really very pretty indeed. But I say these tiny little flowers opaling true pink all the way through the summer months, around 1 to 1.5 inches in diameter. There's often 60, 70 blooms per spray. They really are very, very sweet. So fully reviewed in 2025. You can watch that video at any time. The next one for you, I don't actually have any flowers on, but it is a little poly rose called Baby Fora. This particular one only reviewed a couple of weeks ago by myself, ranging in colour for anywhere from strong magenta pink through to a lovely violet purple. A whole manner of different colours opening on the same plant. Again, very disease resistant. That is an old rose. It's tough as old boots and repeat flowers many, many times all the way through the summer months. So absolutely perfect for blending different colour schemes in the garden. For instance, if you do have it growing in a container and you want to change the colour of your seasonal bedding, maybe one year you want a strong purple and white, the next year you want to maybe grow something that's maybe red and yellow. A really great blending rose because it has lots of different tones in the sprays of flowers. Again, perfect for cutting and bringing into the house and adding that informal edge to a floral arrangement. So that one is really very sweet indeed. A top 5 rose for myself now that's been in the top 20 for the last 5 years in a row and seated very comfortably into the top 10 of this year's brand new top 50 is Eustacia Vi from David Austin Roses. Unbelievably good for growing in a container. It produces very large, beautiful pink blooms, flushed with apricot and yellow. Has a great fragrance, lovely. Low thorn count is really good. Reaches around 3.5 feet tall and remains quite upright. I do tend to give mine a little bit of support because during a good year it will produce so many flowers it does flop ever so slightly. So I do tend to give it a wigwam of basic hazel sticks or pea sticks just to give it a little bit of support. But making onto this list is Eustacia Vi. A rose reviewed by myself not too long ago, and a very highly fragranced rose indeed. It was that video of me sat out on my patio going, ooh, I can't believe the fragrance on this one, is from European breeder Georges Delbard and is named Henri Delbard. A really lovely tri or bi-coloured rose, sherbet yellow in colour, stronger in colour than the shirt I'm wearing today, a rich golden colour which fades out to a sherbet yellow with a beautiful pink halo around the outside of the flower. An absolute knockout fragrance, great disease resistance, and grows quite nicely in a pot, only reaching around 2.5 feet tall. Henri Delbard is a great one to make it on this particular list. Right. Next one, also reviewed just a few days ago by myself, is Happy Ruby Wedding. Now, I did say in the review for this actual rose, it's a great rose for gifting someone who may be at a certain time of life. Celebrating a ruby anniversary is a no mean feat these days, and off the top of my head, it's 40 years celebrated for a ruby wedding. Often at this point in people's lives, the mobility is not as good as it used to be, and a great rose for growing in a pot, cutting, and then bringing into the house to be enjoyed in a vase. But a great, very strong, powerful ruby red flower which free flowers all the way through the season, but a really nice little hybrid tea producing really strongly powerful coloured roses on a very small and compact plant, perfect for growing in a pot. So that one makes it comfortably onto this list. One also reviewed during 2025 from Harkness Roses is the Menopause Charity Rose. Now, this one not unfortunately in flower today, but a really lovely salmon pink bloom, opens to a very nice informal flower, about 3.5 inches in diameter, free flowering all the way through June, July, August and into September. It has a fairly low thorn count, great, strong, vivid, glossy green foliage, and a knockout fragrance to boot. The Menopause Charity Rose not only is supporting a really great charity here in the UK by Harkness Roses, but also a very, very good rose for growing in a container. So that one is the Menopause Charity Rose. One I've missed, I've skipped on and gone a little bit too far, is actually reviewed this year and available on my subscription-based content, but that video will become available to the wider population at the end of January 2026, is this old rose, Little White Pet, an absolutely adorable little button rose. You can see producing sprays of pure white flowers with a little sort of pink tinge to the back of them as they age, producing really large sprays all the way through the summer months. A very small and compact plant, reaching just around 2 feet by 2 feet. It's perfect for growing right at the front of a border, or if you wanted to, in a large patio container when it's going to work really hard for its money and for its place in the garden. Great disease resistance. This is a very sweet little rose. Once again, for cutting, a few sprays of this in a vase last really, really well, and add that lovely informal edge to a arrangement if you wanted to bring a Little White Pet into the house. Right, where are we? The Mayflower is up next from David Austin Roses. That one is obviously the sugar pink sport of another rose that I'm going to be talking to you about in just a second. And I actually have the other rose. So the Mayflower from David Austin Roses, actually named to commemorate the first printing of the American David Austin catalogue. I can't remember the year, but a very, very good and hardy little rose, sharing some really lovely characteristics with its white sister rose. This one is Susan Williams Ellis. Now, I hope I always get that one right. I'm always very, very aware that I may get that one wrong. So let's have a look at my notes again. No, Susan Williams Ellis, a really lovely rose, absolutely identical to the Mayflower in shape and colour and form. However, this one pure white as snow, producing these cone-shaped flowers. If I bring this one up so you can see, a cone-shaped bloom where the petals roll back ever so slightly towards the stems. Both of these roses, both the Mayflower and Susan Williams Ellis, have a lovely grey-green sheen to the foliage. Both very tolerant to heat, very tolerant to a poor or a stony soil, and more importantly to dry weather conditions. Not being particularly susceptible to disease, they rebuff things like rust and things like black spot quite well. So fantastic for growing in a pot, especially if you are a little on the lax side when it comes to the maintenance of your roses growing in pots. This one also, just such a lovely fragrance. Really is very lovely. So the Mayflower and Susan Williams Ellis from David Austin, making it onto the best for growing in containers collection. Haven't got the Mayflower for you today. We also have Dame Deborah James from the Harkness Rose Company, reviewed by myself in 2025, producing really lovely, pure white flowers. Fantastic for growing in a container. It's short and it's very compact, producing a nice, well-balanced shrub, which for me is important when you're growing in a container. You want something that's going to look well-balanced and handsome and very attractive all the way through the year, depending on whether it's in flower or not. So Dame Deborah James from the Harkness Rose Company does exactly that. And once again, another rose really good for cutting and bringing into the house, where it lasts several days whilst cut in a vase. A very good one. A rose also reviewed by myself during 2025, so you can see why this list has had to have been updated so heavily, because lots of these roses coming through from recent reviews over 2025 and 2024 is Fragrant Delight. Available from Peterbilt's Roses, a very beautiful little apricot rose, producing an abundance of flowers. This rose will never be out of flower through the summer months, flowering for sometimes up to 6 to 7 months in a row, always producing flowers on a short, compact and very small little stocky plant, which is perfect for growing in a patio container. Right, another one also reviewed during this year, producing unbelievably large flowers, is Buxom Beauty. I've gone on and on about this particular rose this year because it really has captivated my attention. Personally, I was never a fan of the hybrid tea rose, a little bit dated for my tastes. Obviously, most of them heralding from the 50s, 60s and 70s are obviously still being bred now, but for me, just a little bit dated in their style. However, Buxom Beauty is absolutely stunning. I don't have a flower for you today, but you're just going to have to go back and watch some of the other media about a particular rose. Once again, available from Peterbilt's. It's the size of the flower which is sheerly astonishing. 5.5, sometimes 6 inches in diameter. So if you want to grow a rose in a container but still want to cut roses and bring them into the house, maybe 5 5 or 6 blooms was enough to fill a very substantial vase here in the house and lasted for about 5 or 6 days. For a great plant for doing that. So Buxom Beauty also making it very comfortably onto this brand new list. Right, another one that I have a flower for you today, also available from Peterbilt's, is Hannah Gordon. Another really lovely transition rose, as I'm going to call it, with this multitude of different colours. Each flower ever so slightly different, semi-double and loosely formed. They open almost flat with this beautiful soft pink and cerise pink edges painted around the outside of them. Free flowering, this one is going to go on and on for months and months on end, producing beautiful flowers. So each bloom completely different and changing ever so slightly depending on the weather conditions. In cooler temperatures, you're going to have a much stronger cerise pink around the outside, which blushes normally the other way. Often you'll find that the colour bleaches from a rose. This one actually flushes with more colour the older the flower becomes. So you get much more colour towards the back of the flush, just as the petals are just about to fall. But a stronger colour in in lower temperatures, and a much softer apple blossom white pink blush when it's warmer. But Hannah Gordon, a really lovely rose for growing in a pot, and transitioning well between hot pinks and strong reds and creams and whites, and maybe even into sherbet yellows like the shirt I'm wearing today. So a very good rose for growing in a container or a pot. Right, next one, again from Peterbilt's, is a very small and compact rose called Togmeister. Reviewed by myself way back in 2022 or 2023, it produces really beautiful, strong yellow flowers. Togmeister has a really good fragrance as well. So if fragrance is important to you, this one I would also suggest makes it into a large hanging basket, a very small plant, reaching just around 2'6" in height. So Togmeister, please make sure you have a look at the review for that one. A really lovely one, named in honour of a radio legend and all-round good egg, and obviously the presenter of the Eurovision Song Contest here in the UK for many years, sorely missed Sir Terry Wogan. Togmeister was named after him. So a very good rose indeed. So do make sure you look out for that one. And another one from Peterbilt's, which produces really good hips at the very back end of the season as well. So adding another dimension to your patio garden if you want to grow that one in a pot. Another rose for you today that I don't have one out for you, making it into my hanging basket collection as well. As tough as old boots and really easy to grow. Once again, good for pollinators, is Ballerina, producing huge sprays of informal little pink flowers with a little blush white centre. Ballerina is great for disease resistance, very free flowering, and again has that informal nature, much the same as when we were talking about Little White Pet and Heavenly Pink. Quite floppy and quite billowy in its nature, so great for the top of a wall or maybe in an elevated urn or a hanging basket, somewhere where it can sort of droop and hang. A very nice plant indeed, with a very long flowering season. So Ballerina up for you today. This particular one is Sweet Dream, a patio rose. As you would expect, everything is small and petite. The flowers are beautiful, rich golden apricot with a lovely glowing yellow centre. It's fairly upright and comes up to around 3 to 3.5 feet, and really finds its stride towards the back end of the season. So July, August and September are really great months for Sweet Dream. Also, as you can see, producing really lovely hips. This swelling behind the plant here, this is going to turn bright yellow, orange and red towards the back end of the season. So Sweet Dream, the particular review on this rose is available to membership subscribers only until the end of January 2026, but will be widely available from there. But making it onto this collection is Sweet Dream, a really lovely little patio rose. Next up, reviewed during 2025, is Lovely Lady, which is available from Peterbilt's Roses. Really large and informal, soft pink blooms, produced freely all the way through the summer months. We've then got a rose which I've just finished working with today, actually. This one, bred by Cordes and available from Peterbilt's, is Winter Sun, producing absolutely enormous flowers. Now, my personal opinion of this one, I absolutely love the flower. It really is very pretty. This colour, obviously I wouldn't be wearing a shirt of this colour if I didn't like this colour, but this colour is absolutely beautiful. It's just stunningly soft. However, for me, the flowers are a little on the large side. This poor plant only reaching around 2.5 feet high and around 1.5 to 2 feet wide. These flowers measuring some 4.5, sometimes even 5 inches across. For myself, it just looks a little bit heavy and a little bit bulky. But if you're looking for a hard-working, disease-resistant rose, you can trust the Cordes brand for that. Always a great disease resistance. This one does best in my opinion, dappled shade. So if you have a slightly shady spot, needs about 4 or 5 hours of direct sunlight per day, but please try and avoid planting winter sun in direct sunlight, or you'll bleach out this really delicate sherbet yellow flower, and it will go almost sort of a heavy cream, which again is very attractive, but for me, this sherbet yellow is why you'd grow it. You can see there that rich golden yellow bud with that telltale swirl in the center, hybrid tea swirl, and just producing one individual flower per stem, but an astonishingly long growing period on this particular rose, flowering all the way from June right the way through to the very end of October, sometimes even into November. So if you're wanting a rose to work really hard and produce really big, blousy flowers on your patio or terrace, this one is one that you want to look out for. So this one is Winter Sun, available from Peter Beals, but bred by Cordes. Right, who have we got up next? Winter Sun, two from Peter Beals now. Neither in flower, but unfortunately one renowned for being the best rose that Peter Beals has bred for a very long time, the MacMillan Nurse Charity Rose. All proceeds from that rose going straight to the MacMillan Charity, cancer charity here in the UK. I believe bred in 1998, MacMillan Nurse is an absolutely phenomenal rose, just reaching 2'6". Heavily related to the rose that's coming after it on this list, but unfortunately not in flower today. Named after and in honour of Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen, is called Frilly Cuff and was named after his large flamboyant cuffs. Both absolutely exceptional roses, MacMillan Nurse and Frilly Cuff, working really hard for their money, very rarely out of flower, producing disc-like flowers, something in the region of 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 inches in cross, in large sprays. Both of those have really lovely burnt burgundy red edges to them and a slight amount of mossing behind the flowers themselves, which for me is just really very cute. Both very disease resistant and free flowering. They're absolutely perfect for growing in a patio pot or container with great disease resistance. So they're very, very good roses indeed. One up for you next that's fallen into a little bit of obscurity, but which I'm going to keep singing and dancing about, which I absolutely love in my garden. Anne Boleyn from David Austin Roses. Not in flower today, but a really, really lovely one. Not only for producing lots of flowers for during the summer months, but also great hips at the back end of the season as well. So we'll be making it onto my brand new hips collection that I'll be showcasing probably in October and November for you as I continue to work through all of the bits and pieces, reworking and adding some of these wonderful roses. So best for containers, also containing Anne Boleyn today. I think bred in 1999. That one is not very well known anywhere in the world and is a really lovely rose, producing particularly beautiful flat little flowers measuring about 2 inches in diameter. They're producing huge sprays, beautiful pink with an apricot edge to them. Anne Boleyn is really very pretty indeed. Making it onto several best of collections with myself, including best for fragrance. This, unfortunately, is not the best type of flower for this particular one. This is Boscobell from David Austin Roses. This one for growing in a pot because it actually produces two enormous flushes of flowers. One at the beginning of June, lasting into the beginning of July. It's then going to take a little bit of a break. So if you're growing this particular plant in a container, I'd suggest moving it to the back of the display, maybe tuck it to a different area of the house and allow it just to take a little bit of a break, and then it's going to be back in flower for August, September and into late October. A really nice one with a fantastic fragrance. Makes it onto my best for fragrance collection as well. So here for best for growing in containers is Boscobell. This flower, I say, not a particularly great one. It's very hot here and it's completely fried, but I wanted to bring one wherever I could to talk about. Another rose from David Austin Roses now, which is also very good, very much like the rose that we started this collection with today, Roald Dahl. Great for growing in fairly deep shade. So the next one up for you is Port Sunlight. That one growing very, very well in just 4 or 5 hours of direct sunlight per day. So great for growing on an east or north-facing aspect, but also perfect for growing in a large patio container. As long as the pot is measuring at least 45 to 50 centimeters in diameter, port sunlight is a really good one for growing in fairly deep shade. Maybe you want a pair of these, maybe you want Roald Dahl and port sunlight, but a really nice one, a pin cushion flower, lovely little dome on top of it, very sweet. So if that one appeals and what I'm saying, those words really appeal to you, make sure that you watch the full personal review for that one. A rose that's really captivated my attention, I really get excited about this one. During 2025's review season, this one really lives up to its name. This one is truly scrumptious. Look at it, it's just beautiful. Available from English Roses, our beautiful sort of antique coral pink coloured flower. The nicest thing about this one, not only is it really disease resistant, very free flowering, producing loads and loads of bang for your buck in a pot, reaching around 2'6" to 3 foot high, but it's the change of colour on its foliage which really draws me to this one. Flushing burgundy, purple, scarlet red between flowerings and at the very beginning of the season. So a very, very handsome all-round rose that looks absolutely phenomenal. Really large flowers which last well, what not only cuts but also on the plant, and a telltale way for you to identify roses that are going to be lasting on the plant for a good length of time is the center of the plant. When fully blown out, truly scrumptious, covers the sexual parts of the flower in those curled petals, ever so shyly covering up the stamens and the stigma in the center of the flower, meaning that it's difficult for a pollinator to get in there, so they last a couple of more extra days on the plant and give you a little bit more extra interest. But this one is really, really very good. I think bred way back in 1988 or 1987. Please forgive me if I'm wrong on that. I'm working from memory for this whole video. We haven't stopped talking for 35 minutes. So this is all coming out of me quite naturally. So if I got the date wrong, please excuse me. But a very, very good rose. I think coming from Dixon off the top of my head. Again, if I got that wrong, please excuse me. But truly scrumptious, living up to its name. And it is utterly scrumptious. It's really, really beautiful. I love this colour. That lovely deep coral, sort of pinky peach. Just really, really lovely. So great for growing in a container. Is truly scrumptious. And you can see there, I'll bring that camera in a second, lined up to Boscobell, not actually a completely different colour. It does lack a little bit of a fragrance, but it's, for me, still a very, very exceptionally good rose. Another one from David Austin Roses, which is quite unusual, is Grace, producing a star-shaped flower. Not very many of those within the David Austin collection. The petals are actually pointed around the outside, so you get this sort of pointed star look to the flower. Very, very pretty, and it nods, in my opinion, very gracefully. Does have the ability to stand up, but does nod very informally with a very lime green, fresh foliage. Reviewed by myself way back in 2021, Grace is a great rose for growing in a container. Getting it up ever so slightly off the floor means that you get to enjoy that nod ever so slightly, but a very, very pretty apricot rose here on this collection. Next up, and the very, very last rose to be bringing you, 30 roses in total that I've talked to you about, is the Lady Gardner. Again, from David Austin Roses, an absolutely beautiful rose, which always causes a great deal of controversy when I post it. The flowers ranging in colour from a strong, rich apricot, like this one here, all the way through to a very, very heavy coffee cream with edges of pink to it. Depending on where you grow this particular rose will depend on the colour you get and depending on the temperatures you're also having. Cooler flushes of roses produced very early on in the season in early June will be a strong, rich apricot. Flowers produced during warmer months, July, August and September, will often be very, very heavily bleached out. This plant still will be in flower towards the end of September and into October, once again taking on this rich, dark and strong apricot. Great for growing in a container, great for cutting and bringing into the house, producing strong, upright and very sturdy cuttable stems. Not very many within the David Austin collections can have that accolade assigned to them. So the Lady Gardner, a very, very good rose for growing in a container. I've got one that I had on a site maintained by myself for several years growing in a container, which I took some extraordinary pictures of, which I shall continue to post all the time. But yes, the Lady Gardner from David Austin Roses, making it onto this very, very long collection for growing in containers. I say all of the roses showcased for you today not only are great for growing in containers, but also have a long flowering period. I wanted to make sure that these ticked as many boxes for you as possible, and not just small roses with 1 or 2 flushes. Everybody lined up and everybody I've talked to you about at some length will have a great long flowering period. In my opinion, all score very well for disease resistance and stand up well to heat and exposed sites as well. So all of these can be relied upon. I hope you've enjoyed today's best of collection for growing in pots and containers. Make sure that you do continue to watch here on YouTube if you want to watch all of the individual rose reviews. And there are going to be some that won't be available until January 2026, but I'll load them to the playlists as soon as they're available publicly for you. Or you can become a membership subscriber, watch all of the videos over 1 month, and then cancel your membership subscription. It's as simple as that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's collection of 30 roses that are perfect for growing in containers and pots. I'm the Gardener Ben. I will see you all again very soon. Take good care now. Bye-bye.